The stagecoach lurched to a stop in Silver Reef, Utah, and Zelda Patterson stepped down into the dusty street with nothing but a worn carpetbag and dreams that everyone back home had laughed at. The year was 1881, and the mining town sprawled before her like a promise written in sun-bleached wood and red sandstone cliffs. The kind of place where a woman with ambitions might actually carve out something for herself if she was brave enough to try. She had left Missouri 3 weeks ago, enduring rattling trains and uncomfortable coach rides, all because she had told her family she wanted to open a photography studio, and they had looked at her like she had grown a second head. Her father had been the worst, shaking his head with that disappointed expression she knew so well. Photography is not a woman's business, Zelda. You need to find a husband and settle down before you become a spinster. At 22, she was apparently dangerously close to that fate in her mother's eyes. Her sisters had married young, producing children and keeping house, and they had joined in the chorus of discouragement. No one had believed she could do it. No one had even pretended to support her dream. So, she had saved every penny from her work as a seamstress, purchased a used camera, and developing equipment from a photographer who was retiring and bought a ticket west. Silver Reef had seemed like the perfect place. A town built on silver mining that was still growing, still full of possibility. She needed somewhere that did not know her, somewhere she could prove everyone wrong. The main street bustled with afternoon activity. Miners walked past in their dusty clothes, heading towards saloons after their shifts. Wagons rolled by carrying supplies. Women in simple dresses hurried along the wooden sidewalks, baskets over their arms. Zelda hefted her carpetbag and started walking, looking for the boarding house mentioned in the advertisement she had responded to months ago. She found it after asking directions from a kind-looking woman outside the general store. The boarding house was a 2-story structure painted white, with a sign that read, Mrs. Chen's Lodging. Zelda had been relieved when she had received the letter confirming her reservation, as she knew many places would not rent to a single woman without questions. Mrs. Chen turned out to be a small Chinese woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She looked Zelda up and down when she arrived at the door. "Miss Patterson?" "Yes, madam. I wrote to you about renting a room." "You said you are opening a business. What kind of business?" Zelda lifted her chin. "A photography studio." "I am a photographer." Mrs. Chen's expression did not change, but something flickered in her eyes that might have been approval. "I see. Rent is due first of every month. No men in your room. Breakfast is at 7, dinner at 6. You miss it, you do not eat. Understand?" "Yes, madam." "Good. Come in." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out onto the side street. Zelda set down her bag and sat on the bed, suddenly exhausted. She had done it. She was here. Now came the hard part of actually making her dream work. The next morning, after a breakfast of rice porridge and tea that was different from anything she had eaten back home, but surprisingly good, Zelda set out to find a suitable location for her studio. She had enough money saved for 3 months of rent if she was careful, maybe 4 if she was extremely frugal. That meant she needed to start bringing in income quickly. She walked up and down the main street, noting which buildings were empty. There was a small storefront between a dry goods store and a barber shop that had a "for rent" sign in the dusty window. It was not large, but it had good light from the front windows, and she thought the back room might work as a developing area. She noted the name of the landlord and decided to inquire after she had seen all her options. As she stood there peering through the window, trying to imagine how she might arrange the space, a voice behind her said, "Thinking of opening a business?" Zelda turned to find a man standing a few feet away, his hat tilted back on his head. He was tall and lean, with the sun-weathered skin of someone who spent most of his time outdoors. His dark hair was a bit too long, curling at his collar, and his eyes were a striking green that stood out against his tanned face. He wore the practical clothing of a working cowboy, denim trousers, a cotton shirt, a leather vest, and worn boots with spurs that jingled faintly when he moved. "Yes," she said, straightening her shoulders. "A photography studio." His eyebrows rose with what looked like genuine interest rather than skepticism. "A photographer? That is quite an undertaking." She waited for the dismissive comment to follow, the suggestion that she should reconsider, but he just looked at her with those green eyes and smiled slightly. "I am Ethan Anderson. I work at the Diamond Creek Ranch just outside of town, but I am in Silver Reef often enough. I have never met a woman photographer before." Zelda Patterson, she said, relaxing a fraction. I suppose there are not many of us. You looking at this building? I am considering it. I need to speak with the landlord. Ethan nodded toward the building. That would be Mr. Wilson. He owns several properties in town. His office is in the bank building down the street. He paused, then added, Fair warning, he can be difficult, likes to drive a hard bargain. Thank you for the information. Welcome. Ethan tipped his hat. I hope you find what you need, Miss Patterson. It would be good for Silver Reef to have a photographer. Right now the nearest one is in St. George, and that is a long way to travel for a portrait. He walked away before she could respond, his spurs jingling with each step. Zelda watched him go, surprised by the brief encounter. He had not laughed at her dream. He had not suggested she was foolish. He had actually seemed supportive, even if only in passing. She found Mr. Wilson's office and discovered that Ethan's warning had been accurate. The landlord was a portly man with mutton chop whiskers who looked at her with obvious doubt when she explained what she wanted to rent the space for. A photography studio? He leaned back in his chair, making it creak. That is an expensive venture, Miss Patterson. The rent on that building is $25 a month. It was more than she had hoped, but not impossible if she could start getting clients quickly. I can pay 3 months in advance. His eyebrows rose. Can you now? He studied her for a long moment. And what happens when you realize this business of yours is not going to work and you want to break the lease? Zelda felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. That will not happen, Mr. Wilson. I am committed to making this work. He did not look convinced, but after another long pause, he nodded. 3 months in advance, then. But I will want a signed lease, and if you miss a payment after that, you are out. Understood? Understood. They worked out the details, and by the time Zelda left the bank building, she had a key to her new studio in her pocket, and significantly less money in her purse. Her hands shook slightly as she unlocked the door to the empty storefront. This was real now. She was really doing this. The space was dusty and needed a thorough cleaning, but it had good bones. The front room would be perfect for a reception area and posing space. The back room was smaller and darker, which was actually ideal for a developing room. She would need to set up her equipment, arrange furniture, and somehow let people know she was open for business. She spent the rest of that day and most of the next scrubbing floors, washing windows, and trying to make the space presentable. Mrs. Chen's husband helped her carry in the heavy trunk containing her camera and developing equipment from the boarding house. On the third day, she painted a sign that read, Patterson Photography Studio, Portraits and Landscapes, and hung it outside the door. Then she waited for customers. The first week was discouraging. A few people stopped to peer in the windows curiously, but no one came inside. Zelda sat in her studio, trying not to panic as she watched her funds dwindle with each meal she purchased, each small expense. She had printed cards advertising her services and left them at various businesses around town, but so far nothing had come of it. On the 8th day, as she was considering whether she could afford to eat dinner, or if she should skip it to conserve money, the door opened. Ethan Anderson stepped inside, looking around with interest. Miss Patterson, he said, removing his hat. Your studio looks fine. You have done a lot with the space. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. She stood, trying not to show her desperation. Are you interested in having your portrait taken? Actually, I was thinking about something different. He moved closer, his eyes on the examples of her work that she had hung on the walls. They were photographs she had taken back in Missouri, practice portraits of her sister's children, landscapes of the countryside. Do you do photographs of horses? Horses? The ranch where I work, we breed some of the finest quarter horses in Utah. The owner, Mr. Dalton, has been talking about wanting to advertise our stock, maybe send photographs to potential buyers in other territories. I mentioned that Silver Reef had a new photographer, and he seemed interested. Hope flared in Zelda's chest. I would be happy to photograph horses, Mr. Anderson. I have done some animal photography, though I admit most of my experience is with people. Ethan smiled, and it transformed his whole face, making him look younger and lighting up those green eyes. I think horses might be easier to work with than people in some ways. They do not worry about how they look in the photograph. She found herself smiling back. That is true. When would Mr. Dalton like me to come to the ranch? Would tomorrow work? I could come by with a wagon in the morning to help you transport your equipment. The ranch is about 5 miles out of town. Tomorrow would be perfect. After Ethan left, Zelda allowed herself a moment of pure relief. This could be the break she needed. If she did a good job photographing the horses, if the ranch owner was pleased, he might tell others. Word of mouth could make or break a business in a town like this. She spent the evening preparing her equipment, making sure everything was clean and in working order. She packed her camera carefully, along with extra plates and all the chemicals she would need. She barely slept that night, her mind racing through all the possible things that could go wrong. Ethan arrived promptly at 9 the next morning, driving a sturdy wagon. He helped her load her equipment with careful hands, making sure nothing was jostled too much. As they drove out of town, heading into the red rock country that surrounded Silver Reef, he asked, "Where did you learn photography?" "There was a photographer in my town back in Missouri who needed someone to help in his studio. I started as just someone to sweep floors and greet customers, but he taught me the technical aspects over time. When he retired, he sold me some of his equipment." She did not mention how her family had reacted, how they had seen it as an embarrassing eccentricity rather than a real skill. "Did your family support you coming out here?" The question was asked gently, but it still stung. Zelda looked out at the landscape, the sagebrush and sandstone formations glowing in the morning light. "No, they thought I was foolish. My father wanted me to marry and give up these ideas. But you came anyway." "I came anyway." Ethan was quiet for a moment, then said, "That takes courage." Something in his tone made her look at him. He was watching the road ahead, but there was a thoughtfulness to his expression. "Do you think so? Everyone back home thought it was reckless and selfish." "Courage often looks like recklessness to people who are afraid to take risks themselves." He glanced at her, and his eyes were warm. "I think it is admirable that you knew what you wanted and went after it." Zelda felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of a tension she had been carrying for so long. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. No one had ever called her brave for pursuing her dream. "Thank you, Mr. Anderson. That means more than you might realize. Call me Ethan, and I mean it." He smiled at her again. "I am looking forward to seeing what you can do with those horses." The Diamond Creek Ranch was impressive, sprawling across a valley with the red cliffs rising behind it. The main house was built of adobe and wood, and there were several barns and corrals. Horses grazed in the pastures, and Zelda could see immediately that they were beautiful animals, well cared for and strong. Mr. Dalton was a gruff man in his 50s with a weathered face and a direct manner. He shook Zelda's hand with the same firm grip he would have given a man, which she appreciated. "Ethan tells me you can photograph horses. I want to show potential buyers what quality stock we have here. Can you do that?" "Yes, sir. I will need to set up my equipment and get the right light. It would be best to photograph them in the late afternoon when the sun is not directly overhead." "Fine. Ethan, show her around and help her with whatever she needs. We will start with Copper, I think. He is our best stud." Ethan spent the day helping Zelda prepare. He was patient and attentive, listening to what she needed and making it happen. When she explained that she wanted to photograph the horses against the backdrop of the red cliffs, he helped her find the perfect location. When she needed someone to hold the horses still and calm them, he did so with an easy competence that spoke of years of experience with animals. Copper was a magnificent chestnut quarter horse with a white blaze down his face. Ethan led him to the spot Zelda had chosen, speaking softly to the animal and stroking his neck. The horse stood calmly, and Zelda worked quickly, adjusting her camera and checking the light. When she finally took the photograph, she felt a surge of confidence. This was what she was good at. This was what she had trained for. She took several more photographs of Copper from different angles, then moved on to other horses that Mr. Dalton wanted documented. By the time the sun was setting, she had taken nearly 20 photographs. Her back ached from bending over the camera, and her hands were stained with chemicals from the developing process. But she felt satisfied. Ethan had stayed with her the entire time, helping without hovering, offering suggestions without being condescending. As they packed up her equipment in the fading light, he said, "You are very good at this. The way you work, it is like watching an artist." Zelda felt warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with the late afternoon heat. "Thank you. Photography is an art, even though some people do not see it that way." "I see it." He secured the last of her equipment in the wagon. "When will the photographs be ready?" "I will need a few days to develop and print them properly. I want them to be perfect." Mr. Dalton will appreciate that. Ethan helped her into the wagon, his hand warm and steady on her elbow. As they drove back towards Silver Reef in the gathering dusk, he said, "Can I ask you something, Zelda?" The use of her first name sent a little thrill through her. "Of course. What made you choose Silver Reef? Of all the places you could have gone, why here?" She considered the question. "I needed somewhere that was still growing, somewhere there might be opportunity, and I suppose I wanted somewhere beautiful. I had seen photographs of Utah, the red rocks and the desert. It called to me somehow." "It is beautiful," Ethan agreed. "Harsh sometimes, but beautiful. I came here 5 years ago from Texas. I was working cattle drives, moving from place to place, and I was tired of never having a home. When I got to Silver Reef and saw the country around it, I decided to stay, got a job at Diamond Creek, and have been there ever since." "Do you like it, working with horses?" "I love it." There was simple honesty in his voice. Horses are honest creatures. They do not lie or pretend to be something they are not. If you treat them right, they will give you everything they have. "That sounds like a good way to live." "It is." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the stars beginning to appear overhead. Zelda found herself very aware of Ethan beside her, the way his hands held the reins with easy confidence, the way the starlight caught in his dark hair. She had not come to Utah looking for romance. She had come to build a business, to prove herself. But there was something about this cowboy that drew her, something steady and genuine. When they reached Silver Reef, Ethan helped her unload her equipment and carry it into her studio. As he was about to leave, he paused at the door and looked back at her. "Zelda, I enjoyed today. Would you let me take you to dinner sometime? There is a decent restaurant near the hotel." Her heart skipped. "I would like that, Ethan." His smile was bright even in the dim light from her lamp. "Good. How about Sunday evening, after you have finished developing those photographs?" Sunday evening would be perfect. After he left, Zelda stood in her studio, surrounded by her equipment and the smell of chemicals, and felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope, yes, but also something warmer. The possibility of connection, of someone who saw her not as a foolish woman with impossible dreams, but as someone worth knowing. She spent the next 3 days working on the photographs. Developing them was painstaking work that had to be done in complete darkness, following each step precisely. But when she finally had the prints hanging up to dry and could examine them in the light, she felt a surge of pride. They were good, better than good. The horses looked magnificent, powerful and graceful, with the red rock cliffs providing a dramatic backdrop. She mounted the best prints on cardstock and wrote descriptions on the back as Mr. Dalton had requested, noting each horse's name and lineage. Then she wrapped them carefully and sent a message to the ranch that they were ready. Mr. Dalton came to the studio himself the next day. He examined each photograph carefully, his weathered face unreadable. Zelda held her breath, waiting for his verdict. Finally, he looked up at her and nodded. "These are fine work, Miss Patterson. Better than I had hoped for. How much do I owe you?" She named her price, which was fair but not cheap. She had spent considerable time and materials on the work, and she was determined not to undervalue her skills. Mr. Dalton paid without haggling, which she took as a good sign. Then he said, "I will be showing these to potential buyers. I expect I will need more photographs in the future as we breed new stock, and I will be recommending you to other ranchers in the area." "Thank you, Mr. Dalton. I appreciate your business and your confidence." After he left, Zelda sat down and allowed herself a moment of pure joy. She had done it. Her first real job in Silver Reef, and it had been a success. She had earned money doing what she loved, and she had the promise of more work to come. Sunday evening arrived, and Zelda took extra care with her appearance. She wore her best dress, a deep blue cotton that brought out her eyes, and pinned her dark blonde hair up carefully. When Ethan arrived at the boarding house to collect her, she saw his eyes widen slightly in appreciation. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you. You look very nice yourself." He did. He had clearly made an effort, wearing clean trousers and a pressed shirt, his hair neatly combed. They walked to the restaurant together, and Zelda was aware of people watching them as they passed. Silver Reef was not so large that a new couple going to dinner together would go unnoticed. The restaurant was indeed decent, with clean tablecloths and a menu that offered more than just beef and beans. They ordered steaks and vegetables, and as they waited for their food, Ethan said, Mr. Dalton was very pleased with your photographs. He has been showing them to everyone at the ranch. I am glad. It was a pleasure to photograph such beautiful animals. He meant what he said about recommending you to others. The word is already spreading. I heard some of the other ranch hands talking about wanting to have their portraits taken to send home to their families. That would be wonderful. Their food arrived, and they ate and talked. Ethan told her about growing up in Texas, the son of a farmer who had never had much but had worked hard to provide for his family. He had left home at 18 to find his own way, working various jobs until he had found his place at Diamond Creek Ranch. Zelda told him more about Missouri, about her family, and the photography business where she had learned her trade. "Did you have other dreams?" Ethan asked at one point. "Besides photography, I mean." Zelda considered the question. "I suppose I always dreamed of having my own business, of being independent. Photography was the means to that end, but it also became something I loved for its own sake. There is something magical about capturing a moment in time, preserving it forever." She paused, then added, "No one in my family understood that. They saw it as a waste of time, something that was keeping me from the only future they thought I should want. Marriage and children? Yes. And I am not saying I do not want those things eventually, but I wanted this first. I wanted to know I could do something on my own, that I was capable and skilled at something beyond keeping a house." Ethan nodded slowly. "I think that makes sense. My mother, she was a wonderful woman, but I always thought she might have had dreams of her own that she never got to pursue. She married young, had children right away. Yes, and then she was always too busy and too tired to think about what she might have wanted for herself." He looked at Zelda with those green eyes. "I admire you for going after what you wanted. Even though it is unconventional, especially because it is unconventional." He reached across the table and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm around hers. "Zelda, I have to tell you something. When I first saw you looking in that window on your first day in town, I was struck by you, not just because you are beautiful, though you are, but there was something about the way you stood, the determination in your face. And then when you said you were opening a photography studio, I thought, here is a woman who knows what she wants and is not afraid to reach for it." Zelda's heart was beating fast. "I was so scared that day. I am still scared sometimes. What if I fail? What if everyone back home was right and I was foolish to think I could do this?" "You are not going to fail." Ethan's grip on her hand tightened. "You have too much talent and too much determination, but even if things do not go exactly as you planned, that does not mean you failed. It just means the path was different than you expected. You really believe that?" "I do." They finished dinner and walked slowly back through the town. The evening was cool, the stars brilliant overhead in the way they only were in the desert. When they reached the boarding house, Ethan did not immediately say goodnight. Instead, he turned to face her and said, "Zelda, I know we have only just met, but I would like to keep seeing you if you are willing. I think you are remarkable, and I want to know more about you. I want to support your dreams and see where this might go between us." Zelda looked up at him, at his honest face and kind eyes, and felt something inside her unfurl like a flower opening to the sun. Here was a man who believed in her, who saw her dreams not as foolishness, but as something worthy of support, who looked at her like she was someone special. "I would like that very much, Ethan. I want to keep seeing you too." He smiled, and then, very gently, he leaned down and kissed her. It was a soft, sweet kiss, full of promise. When he pulled back, his eyes were warm. "Good night, Zelda. Good night, Ethan." She went inside, feeling like she was floating. In the space of less than 2 weeks, her whole life had changed. She had her studio, she had her first success, and now she had Ethan, a man who believed in her. The following weeks fell into a pattern. Zelda's business began to grow steadily. Mr. Dalton's recommendations brought other ranchers to her studio, and she photographed more horses, as well as cattle and even a prized bull. The ranch hands came in for portraits to send home, often shy and awkward in front of the camera, but pleased with the results. Some of the miners wanted photographs to send to sweethearts or family back east. Women came in to have their children photographed, and through it all, Ethan was there. He came by the studio whenever he was in town, sometimes just to say hello, sometimes to help with heavy equipment or the difficult setups. On Sundays, which was his day off from the ranch, they spent time together. They went on picnics out in the Red Rock country. where Zelda took landscape photographs and Ethan told her stories about the land. They attended church socials together. They had dinner at the restaurant, or sometimes at the boarding house, where Mrs. Chen had grudgingly approved of Ethan and occasionally let them eat in the parlor instead of the communal dining room. Ethan told her more about his life, his hopes for the future. "I have been saving money," he said one Sunday as they sat on a blanket under the shade of a cottonwood tree by a creek. "Eventually, I want to have my own ranch, not as big as Diamond Creek, but enough land to breed horses, to build something that is mine." "That sounds wonderful," Zelda said. "Do you have a particular place in mind?" "There is land north of here, up near the mountains. Good grazing, water rights. I have had my eye on a parcel for a while now. In another year or two, I should have enough saved for a down payment." "I am sure you will do it," Zelda said. She believed it. Ethan was the kind of man who set goals and worked steadily toward them, who did not get discouraged by setbacks. He looked at her seriously. "Would you want to be part of something like that? Building a ranch, I mean. It would be hard work." Her breath caught. "Are you asking what I think you are asking?" "I am asking if you can see a future that includes both of us." "I know it is soon, Zelda. We have only known each other a few months, but I am falling in love with you. I think I started falling that first day when you told me about your photography studio, with your chin lifted like you were daring the world to tell you that you could not do it." Tears stung Zelda's eyes. "I am falling in love with you too, Ethan. You are the first person who ever believed in my dreams. The first person who looked at what I wanted to do and said, 'Yes, you can do that.' Do you know what that means to me?" "Tell me," he said softly. So she told him. She told him about every dismissal, every discouragement, every time someone had made her feel foolish or unrealistic. She told him about her father's disappointment and her mother's worry. She told him about her sisters who had stopped writing after she left because they were embarrassed by her choices. She told him about the loneliness of believing in yourself when no one else did. Ethan listened to all of it, his hand holding hers, his eyes never leaving her face. When she finished, he pulled her close and held her. "You are the strongest person I know," he said into her hair. "And I promise you, Zelda, I will always believe in you. I will always support your dreams. If you want to keep your photography studio after we are married, you can. If you want to photograph the entire territory, we will figure out how to make it work. Your dreams matter. After we are married," she pulled back to look at him, her heart pounding. He smiled. "I know I have not asked properly yet. I want to do it right, with a ring and everything. But yes, Zelda Patterson, I intend to marry you if you will have me. A cowboy who spends most of his days smelling like horses, and who does not have much money yet, but who loves you with everything he has." "Yes," she said through her tears. "Yes, Ethan, I will marry you. I do not care about money or anything else. I care that you see me for who I really am, and you love that person." He kissed her then, deep and thorough, and Zelda felt like her heart might burst from happiness. This was not how she had imagined her life would go when she stepped off that stagecoach in Silver Reef. She had come here for independence and a career. She had not expected to find love, especially not love like this. 2 weeks later, Ethan came to the studio with a small box in his pocket. He had saved up and bought her a simple gold ring with a small garnet set in it. "It is not a diamond," he said, looking almost apologetic. "But the jeweler in town said garnets are good stones, and the color reminded me of the red rocks here in Utah. I thought that was fitting since this is where we found each other." Zelda looked at the ring and then at Ethan, and she started crying again. "It is perfect. I love it. I love you." He slipped it onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. They decided to marry in the spring, giving them time to save more money and make preparations. Zelda continued to build her business, and it was thriving now. She had more clients than she could easily handle, and she was making enough to not only pay her rent and living expenses, but also save. Ethan worked at Diamond Creek, putting in long hours and setting aside every penny he could toward his dream of owning land. In December, Zelda received a letter from her mother. It was the first communication she had had from her family since she left Missouri. With trembling hands, she opened it, not sure what to expect. The letter was stiff and formal at first. Her mother wrote about family news, about Zelda's sisters and their children, about her father's health. But then, near the end, the tone shifted. "Your father showed me the photograph you sent," her mother wrote. "The one of you standing in front of your studio. He did not say anything, but I saw the way he looked at it. I think he is proud of you, Zelda, even if he cannot bring himself to say so. I am writing to tell you that I am proud of you too. I do not fully understand why you had to go so far away, or why a photography studio was so important to you. But I can see in that photograph that you are happy. That is what a mother wants for her daughter. I hope you will write to us more often and tell us about your life in Utah. Zelda clutched the letter to her chest and wept. It was not everything she had hoped for, but it was something. Her mother was trying. That was more than she had dared to hope for when she left. She wrote back immediately, telling her mother about the studio, about the clients, and the work she was doing. And she told her mother about Ethan, about the wonderful man she had met and was going to marry. She tried to put into words what it meant to be loved by someone who believed in her, who supported her dreams instead of trying to diminish them. When Ethan read the letter from her mother, he smiled. "I am glad they are coming around. You deserve to have your family's support." "I have your support," Zelda said, leaning against him. "That is what matters most. You have it always." Winter in Silver Reef was milder than the winter Zelda had known in Missouri, but it still had its cold days. She photographed families in front of Christmas trees, miners bundled in coats, children playing in the rare snow that dusted the red rocks. Ethan spent long hours at the ranch, but came to see her whenever he could. They planned their wedding for April, when the weather would be pleasant and the desert would bloom with wildflowers. Mrs. Chen, who had warmed to Zelda over the months, offered to make her wedding dress. "I was a seamstress in San Francisco before I came here," she explained. "I can make you something beautiful." "I could not ask you to do that," Zelda protested. "You are not asking. I am offering. You have been a good tenant, and you work hard. I respect that. Let me do this for you." The dress Mrs. Chen created was indeed beautiful, made of cream-colored silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. When Zelda tried it on for the final fitting in March, she almost did not recognize herself in the mirror. She looked like a bride, happy and radiant. April arrived with warm sun and blooming cactus flowers. The wedding was held in the small church in Silver Reef, with Mr. Dalton standing up as Ethan's best man, and Mrs. Chen as Zelda's matron of honor. Some of the other ranch hands came, along with several of Zelda's clients who had become friends. It was not a large wedding, but it was full of warmth and genuine affection. When the preacher said, "You may kiss your bride," and Ethan took Zelda in his arms, she felt like everything in her life had led to this moment. All the struggles, all the fears, all the times she had been told her dreams were foolish, had brought her here to Silver Reef, to this man, to this life. They had a small reception at the boarding house, where Mrs. Chen and some of the other boarders had prepared food. There was laughter and toasts and dancing to the music of a fiddler from one of the saloons. As the sun set and the party wound down, Ethan and Zelda slipped away. Ethan had rented a small house on the edge of town, just 2 rooms and a kitchen, but it was theirs. He carried her over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the middle of what would be their bedroom. "Mrs. Anderson," he said, pulling her close. "I like the sound of that." "So do I," she whispered. That night, as they came together as husband and wife, Zelda felt completely safe and loved. Ethan was gentle and passionate, attentive to her needs, making sure their first time was special. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the moonlight that streamed through the window, he said, "Tell me everything you want, Zelda, for our future, for your studio, for everything. I want to know all your dreams so I can help you achieve them." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "Everything? Everything." So she told him. She told him about wanting to expand the studio, maybe hire an assistant eventually. She told him about wanting to photograph the most beautiful places in Utah, to create a collection of landscape images that could be sold to tourists and collectors. She told him about wanting children someday, but not right away, not until the studio was stable and they had saved more money. She told him about wanting to travel, to see other places, to learn from other photographers. And Ethan listened to every word, his hand stroking her hair, his eyes full of love. "We will do all of it," he said, "every single thing. It might take time, but we will make it happen. You really believe that? I believe in you. I believe in us." He pulled her down for a kiss. "Together, we can do anything." The first year of their marriage was busy and full. Zelda ran her studio, and her reputation continued to grow. People came from other towns now, willing to travel to Silver Reef to have their portraits taken by the skilled woman photographer. She hired a young man named Thomas to help with the heavy equipment and to assist with developing photographs, which freed her up to take on more clients. Ethan continued working at Diamond Creek, but he was also actively looking for land. He and Zelda would ride out on Sundays to look at different properties, discussing the pros and cons of each. They wanted something with good water, enough grazing for horses, and close enough to Silver Reef that Zelda could still run her studio. In the fall of their first year of marriage, they found it. A parcel of land about 3 miles from town, with a creek running through it and a view of the red cliffs that made Zelda's photographer's heart sing. It had a small cabin on it, rough but livable, and a barn that needed some repairs. The price was more than Ethan had saved, but the owner was willing to accept a down payment and let them pay off the rest over time. They stood on the land, holding hands, looking at what could be their future. "What do you think?" Ethan asked. "I think it is perfect. I think we should do it." So they did. Ethan gave notice at Diamond Creek, though Mr. Dalton was sorry to see him go and made him promise that Diamond Creek would have first option if Ethan ever had horses to sell. They moved out of the little house in town and into the cabin on their new land. It was hard work, harder than either of them had anticipated. The cabin needed extensive repairs. The barn needed a new roof. They had to buy horses to start their breeding program, and horses were expensive. Zelda continued running her studio, now making the journey into town several days a week. Some days she was exhausted, wondering if they had taken on too much. But Ethan was always there, working beside her, encouraging her. And she did the same for him. When the barn roof collapsed in a winter storm and had to be completely rebuilt, she worked alongside him, hammering nails and hauling lumber. When she was overwhelmed with clients and worried about keeping up with the work, he helped in the studio, learning how to mix chemicals and prepare plates. They were partners in every sense of the word, building their dreams together. In the spring of 1883, 2 years after they had married, Zelda realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had waited to be sure before telling Ethan. When she finally told him, he was splitting wood behind the cabin. She just walked up and said, "We are going to have a baby." He dropped the axe and stared at her. "A baby? You are sure?" "I am sure." He let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around. "We are going to have a baby! Zelda, we are going to be parents." She laughed, dizzy from the spinning and from happiness. "I know, I am excited and terrified. You are going to be an amazing mother. You are going to be an amazing father." The pregnancy was not easy. Zelda had bouts of terrible nausea in the first few months and had to cut back on her hours at the studio. But Thomas had learned enough to handle many of the simpler jobs, and she could focus on the more complex portraits and artistic work. As her belly grew, she found herself photographing more families with children, studying the way mothers held their babies, imagining doing the same with her own child. Their son was born on a cold December night in 1883. The midwife from Silver Reef came to help, and Ethan stayed by Zelda's side through the long hours of labor, holding her hand and wiping her forehead. When the baby finally arrived, healthy and squalling, Zelda looked at his tiny red face and felt a love so overwhelming it took her breath away. "What should we name him?" Ethan asked, holding their son with a wonder in his eyes. They had discussed names, but had not decided. Now, looking at her husband and their child, Zelda said, "I think we should name him Samuel, after your father." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. His father had died when he was young, and he had loved him deeply. "Samuel Anderson. I like that. Thank you, Zelda." Motherhood changed Zelda in ways she had not expected. She loved Samuel with a fierceness that surprised her, and she found herself understanding her own mother better, understanding the worry and the fierce protectiveness. But she was determined not to make the same mistakes. She would support Samuel in whatever dreams he developed. She would encourage him to reach for what he wanted, and she did not give up her own dreams either. When Samuel was 3 months old, she went back to work at the studio part-time, bringing him with her. She rigged up a cradle in the back room where he could sleep while she worked. Clients were charmed by the baby photographer, and several women specifically requested to work with Zelda because they felt she understood what it was like to be a mother trying to capture precious moments. The ranch was also growing. Ethan had built their stock carefully, buying good mares and selecting the best possible stud. The first foals born on their land were strong and healthy, and word spread about the quality of the Anderson horses. They were not rich, but they were making it work, building something solid together. When Samuel was 2 years old, Zelda's mother came to visit. It was the first time any of her family had made the journey to Utah, and Zelda was nervous as she waited at the stagecoach stop in Silver Reef. But when her mother stepped down and saw Zelda waiting, her face broke into a smile. "Zelda, let me look at you." They embraced, and Zelda felt tears sting her eyes. Her mother had aged in the years since she had left Missouri, her hair grayer, her face more lined, but her eyes were the same, and they were warm as they looked at her daughter. "Where is my grandson?" Zelda had left Samuel with Ethan at the ranch, wanting to have time alone with her mother first. "He is at home. You will meet him soon. First, I want to show you my studio." She took her mother through Silver Reef, showing her the town and then the studio. Her mother walked through the space slowly, looking at the photographs on the walls, the equipment set up carefully in the back room. Finally, she turned to Zelda and said, "You did it. You really did it. I did. I am sorry I did not believe in you when you said you were going to do this. I thought you were being foolish and stubborn, but you were right and I was wrong. You have built something remarkable here, Zelda." It was more than Zelda had dared to hope for. "Thank you, Mama. That means everything to me." They drove out to the ranch, and her mother met Ethan and Samuel. Zelda watched as her mother held her grandson, saw the way her face softened, and she watched as her mother talked with Ethan, saw the approval in her eyes as he showed her the ranch and explained what they were building. That night, after Samuel was asleep and Ethan had gone out to check on the horses, Zelda's mother said, "He is a good man, and he clearly loves you very much." "He does. He has always believed in me, Mama, from the very first day we met." Her mother nodded slowly. "That is important in a marriage. I can see that you are happy here, that you have built a good life. I wish I had been more supportive when you first told us your plans. I wish I had told you I believed in you. You are telling me now. That is what matters." Her mother stayed for 2 weeks, and by the time she left, Zelda felt like something had healed between them. Her mother could not undo the past, but she was trying to make amends, and that was enough. The years rolled on, the ranch prospered, Ethan's horses developed a reputation throughout the territory, and they had buyers coming from as far away as Nevada and Colorado. Zelda's photography studio remained successful, and she had become known as one of the best portrait photographers in southern Utah. She had assistants now, 2 young women she was training, and she was able to take more time for the artistic landscape work she loved. In 1886, they had their second child, a daughter they named Clara. She had Ethan's green eyes and Zelda's blonde hair, and she was a sunny-natured child who smiled at everyone. Samuel, now almost 3, was protective of his little sister from the start. The cabin on the ranch had been expanded into a proper house now, with a parlor and a real kitchen and bedrooms upstairs. They had built it together, bit by bit, as they could afford the materials. It was not fancy, but it was comfortable and filled with love. One evening, when Samuel was 5 and Clara was 2, they all sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the red cliffs in shades of gold and crimson. The children were playing in the yard, and Ethan had his arm around Zelda's shoulders. "Do you ever think about where you were 10 years ago?" Ethan asked. Zelda thought about it. 10 years ago, she had still been in Missouri, working as a seamstress, dreaming of something more, but not sure if she would ever have the courage to reach for it. "I think about it sometimes. That girl who stepped off the stagecoach in Silver Reef, she was so scared. But she did it anyway. She did it anyway." Zelda leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder. And then she met a cowboy who said, "Tell me everything you want." And he actually meant it. "I did mean it. I do mean it. Your dreams are my dreams, Zelda. Your happiness is my happiness. And yours are mine." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play, watching the light fade from the sky. This was not the life Zelda had imagined when she first dreamed of becoming a photographer. It was better. She had her studio, her art, her career. But she also had Ethan and Samuel and Clara. She had a partner who believed in her, who supported her dreams while building his own. She had a family that was built on love and mutual respect and the understanding that both their dreams mattered. In 1888, Zelda received a letter from a gallery in San Francisco. They had seen some of her landscape photographs, which had been featured in a traveling exhibition of Western art, and they wanted to represent her work. It was a huge opportunity, the kind of thing she had dreamed about when she first started taking photographs. but it would require her to travel to San Francisco for meetings and potentially to spend time there setting up exhibits. She sat with the letter in her hands, torn. This was a dream come true, but she had children now, a family, a life that she could not just leave behind. Ethan found her sitting at the kitchen table, the letter spread out in front of her. "What is wrong?" She showed him the letter, explained the opportunity. "I do not know what to do. This is everything I dreamed of, but how can I go to San Francisco? We have the children and the ranch, and I cannot ask you to just leave everything." Ethan read the letter carefully, then looked at her with those green eyes that had seen right through her from the first day they met. "Zelda, when have I ever asked you to give up your dreams?" "Never, but this is different. This is not just running a studio in town. This would mean being gone for weeks, maybe months at a time. Then we will figure it out. Maybe we can all go to San Francisco for part of the time. The children are young enough that the travel would not hurt them. Or maybe your mother could come stay and help with the children while you were gone. Or maybe I close the ranch operations down for a few months and come with you." He took her hands. "The point is, we will find a way. You have worked too hard, and you are too talented to pass up an opportunity like this." "You really think so?" "I know so. Tell me everything you want, Zelda. You want to have your work shown in a San Francisco gallery, right?" "Yes." "Then that is what we will make happen." They did make it happen. Zelda's mother agreed to come stay at the ranch to help with the children, and Ethan arranged for one of the ranch hands to manage things while they were gone. In the fall of 1888, Zelda and Ethan traveled to San Francisco, leaving Samuel and Clara with their grandmother. San Francisco was overwhelming and exciting, a city full of energy and culture. The gallery owner loved Zelda's work and mounted a show of her landscape photographs. The opening was attended by wealthy collectors and art critics, and Zelda stood in the gallery in her best dress, looking at her photographs displayed on the walls, and felt a sense of achievement that was almost dizzying. Several of the photographs sold that night for prices that made her gasp. One critic wrote a glowing review in the San Francisco newspaper, calling her a remarkable talent whose work captures the stark beauty of the American West with both technical skill and artistic vision. Ethan stood beside her through all of it, proud and supportive, never once making her feel like her success somehow diminished him. When they returned to Utah 6 weeks later, they had enough money from the sale of her photographs to make improvements to the ranch and to set up a trust fund for the children's education. Samuel and Clara ran to meet them when they arrived home, and Zelda scooped them both up, overwhelmed with how much she had missed them. "I am home," she whispered into their hair. "Mama is home." That night, as they lay in bed in their house on the ranch, Ethan said, "I am so proud of you. What you achieved in San Francisco, that was remarkable. We achieved it together. I could not have done any of it without you believing in me. You had the talent, Zelda. I just had the good sense to recognize it." The years continued to roll forward, bringing changes and growth. In 1890, they had another son named Daniel. Samuel was now 7 and thrilled to have a little brother. Clara, at 4, was less impressed, but came around when she realized Daniel was small enough that she could boss him around. The ranch was thriving, and Ethan had hired several ranch hands to help with the work. They had built a reputation for producing some of the finest quarter horses in the territory. Ethan traveled sometimes to horse auctions and sales, and he always came home with stories and with orders for more horses. Zelda's photography work had evolved. She still took portraits, but she was also doing more artistic work, more landscapes. She had become known nationally in photography circles, with her work appearing in exhibitions across the country. She had published a book of photographs called Red Rock Country that had sold well and been praised by critics. But she was also a mother who attended her children's school events, who bandaged scraped knees and told bedtime stories. She had managed to balance her professional life with her family life in a way that felt right, that felt true to who she was. In 1892, Utah was preparing for statehood, and there was excitement throughout the territory. Zelda was commissioned to take a series of photographs documenting life in Utah that would be presented to Congress as part of the statehood campaign. She spent months traveling with Ethan and the children, photographing mining towns and ranches, Native American communities and Mormon settlements, capturing the diversity and vitality of the place she now called home. When Utah achieved statehood in 1896, one of Zelda's photographs was used on the commemorative poster. It was an image of a family standing in front of their ranch house with the red cliffs behind them. The family was theirs. Ethan and Zelda and their 3 children. It captured something essential about Utah, about the people who had come here to build their dreams in this harsh and beautiful land. Samuel was now 13, tall and serious, already helping significantly on the ranch. Clara was 10, spirited and clever, talking about becoming a teacher. Daniel was 6, still young enough to believe anything was possible. They were good children, and Zelda and Ethan had raised them to believe in themselves, to pursue their dreams whatever they might be. One Sunday afternoon, as the family sat around the dinner table after church, Samuel said, "Papa, I have been thinking. When I am older, I want to expand the ranch, maybe start breeding cattle as well as horses." Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "That is a good idea. We have the land for it." "And Mama," Clara piped up, "I want to learn photography. Will you teach me?" Zelda felt her heart swell. "Of course I will teach you, if that is really what you want." "It is. I love looking at your photographs. I want to make beautiful things too." After dinner, when the children had gone outside to play before evening chores, Ethan pulled Zelda into his arms. They stood in the kitchen, looking out the window at their children, at the land they had built their life on. "We did all right, didn't we?" Ethan said softly. "We did more than all right. We built something amazing." "Tell me what you want now, Zelda. Are there more dreams you have not told me about?" She thought about it. "I want to keep doing what we are doing. I want to photograph the world and raise our children and work this ranch with you. I want to grow old with you, watching our children build their own dreams. I want to be here, in this place we made together." "That sounds perfect to me." In 1898, Samuel was 15 and already looking like a man, tall and broad-shouldered. He had inherited his father's way with horses and his mother's eye for beauty. He could look at a horse and see not just its current condition, but its potential. And he could compose a photograph that captured the essence of what he was looking at. Clara was 13, and she had indeed become an excellent photographer. Zelda had taught her everything she knew, and Clara had taken to it naturally. She had already sold several photographs to local publications, and she talked about maybe going to art school back east someday. Daniel was 9, still trying to figure out what he wanted to do. He liked the ranch work, but he also loved books and talked sometimes about becoming a lawyer or a teacher. Zelda encouraged all of them, just as Ethan had always encouraged her. They told their children that they could be anything they wanted, do anything they set their minds to, and they meant it. That year, Zelda's father passed away. The news came in a letter from her mother, and Zelda grieved for the complicated man who had never quite understood her, but who had, in the end, come to accept her choices. Her mother decided to come live with them in Utah, saying she was too old to manage the farm in Missouri on her own, and that she wanted to be near her grandchildren. She moved into a room in their house, and her presence added a new dimension to their family life. She helped with the children in the household, and she and Zelda spent hours talking, making up for the years when they had been distant. Her mother told stories about Zelda's childhood, about the girl who had always been asking questions and wanting to understand how things worked. "You were always going to do something special," her mother said one evening as they sat on the porch shelling peas. "I see that now. I just wish I had seen it sooner. You see it now, that is what matters." In 1900, as the new century dawned, Zelda stood on the porch of their house looking out at the ranch, at the corrals where Ethan was working with a young horse, at the yard where Daniel was practicing roping a fence post. Clara was inside developing photographs, and Samuel had ridden into town to deliver some horses to a buyer. Her mother was in the kitchen starting dinner preparations. This was her life. This was what she had built, a career that had taken her further than she had ever dreamed, showing her work in galleries and having her photographs published in books and magazines. A family that she loved with all her heart, children who were growing into remarkable people, a partnership with a man who had believed in her from the very start, who had looked at her and seen not a foolish woman with impossible dreams, but someone worth supporting, worth loving. She thought about that girl who had stepped off the stagecoach in Silver Reef 19 years ago, scared and determined. She wished she could go back and tell that girl that it was all going to work out, that the risk was worth it, that the dream was achievable. But maybe that girl had known deep down. Maybe that was why she had been brave enough to try. Ethan came up to the porch, wiping sweat from his forehead. "What are you thinking about?" "Everything. How we got here. How lucky I am." "We are both lucky." He put his arm around her. "Remember when I asked you to tell me everything you wanted? I remember. It was on our wedding night. You told me so many things. Have we achieved them all? Zelda thought about it. Not all of them. There are always more dreams to dream. But we have achieved more than I ever thought possible. And we did it together. Together, Ethan agreed. He turned her to face him. I love you, Zelda Anderson. I have loved you since the day I saw you looking in that window with such determination. I will love you until the day I die. And I love you. You gave me something no one else ever had. You believed in me. You believed in my dreams. They were good dreams. They are good dreams. In 1902, Samuel was 19 and ready to take on more responsibility at the ranch. He had ideas for expansion, for improving their breeding program, and Ethan listened to all of them with pride. It is time for me to start stepping back, he told Zelda one night. Samuel is ready to take over more of the day-to-day operations. I want to spend more time just enjoying life with you. Are you sure you love this ranch? I do love it, but I love you more. And we have built something solid here. Samuel is capable of running things. It is time to let the next generation take the lead. Clara, at 17, had decided she wanted to take over Zelda's photography studio in town. She had been working there for the past 2 years, learning the business side as well as the artistic side. I want to keep it going, Mama. Build on what you started, maybe even expand it. Open a gallery space where we can show photographs as art, not just as portraits. Zelda felt a lump in her throat, her daughter, carrying on her legacy. I think that is a wonderful idea, Clara. I will help you however I can. Daniel, at 13, had finally figured out what he wanted. He wanted to study law. He was fascinated by the way the legal system worked, by the idea of justice and fairness. Ethan and Zelda promised him they would send him to school, that they would support whatever education he needed. In 1905, when Zelda was 46 and Ethan was 48, they took a trip together, just the two of them. Their children were old enough now to manage without them for a while. Samuel was running the ranch with confidence. Clara was running the photography studio. Daniel was away at school in Salt Lake City, studying with a tutor to prepare for law school. They traveled to California, spending time in San Francisco, where Zelda's work was still being shown in galleries, and then down the coast to see the ocean. They stood on the beach together, watching the waves roll in, and Ethan said, I never imagined my life would turn out like this. A boy from a poor farm in Texas ending up standing on the Pacific Ocean with the woman he loves. I never imagined my life would turn out like this either. A girl from Missouri who dreamed of being a photographer, ending up with a successful career, a wonderful family, and the best husband in the world. You give me too much credit. I give you exactly the credit you deserve. She turned to look at him. His hair was streaked with gray now, and there were lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. But to her, he was as handsome as the day she had met him. You changed my life, Ethan. You believed in me when no one else did. You supported my dreams while building your own. You made me believe that I could have everything, that I did not have to choose between my career and a family. You changed my life too. You taught me that love is not about one person giving up their dreams for another. It is about both people helping each other achieve their dreams. It is about building something together that is bigger than either person could build alone. They kissed there on the beach, the waves crashing behind them, the sun setting in a glory of orange and gold. They had been married for 24 years, and Zelda loved him more now than she had on their wedding day. Love had grown and deepened with time, with shared struggles and triumphs, with children raised and dreams achieved. When they returned home to Utah, they found that Samuel had successfully negotiated a major sale of horses to a buyer in Colorado. Clara had been commissioned to photograph a prominent family in St. George. Daniel had sent a letter saying he had been accepted to a law program in Denver. Everything was moving forward, growing, changing. Zelda's mother was still with them, though she was slowing down now, her health becoming more fragile. She spent her days sitting on the porch, watching the activity of the ranch, surrounded by the family she had once worried would never exist for her unconventional daughter. One afternoon, as Zelda sat with her, her mother said, I need to tell you something. What is it, Mama? I am proud of you. I should have said it more often, but I am saying it now. You built an extraordinary life, Zelda. You followed your dreams, and you did not let anyone stop you, not even me when I tried. You came around in the end. That is what matters. I wish I had believed in you from the start. I wish I had been the kind of mother who said, yes, go open a photography studio, go make your dreams come true. Instead, I was the mother who said, you are being foolish, you need to settle down. But you learned, Mama, and you taught me something too. You taught me that it is never too late to change, to grow, to admit when you were wrong. That has made me a better mother to my own children. Her mother squeezed her hand. You are a wonderful mother, and you found a wonderful man. That Ethan, he is special. The way he looks at you, even after all these years, like you are the most precious thing in the world. He makes me feel that way. He always has. Her mother passed away peacefully in her sleep in 1907. They buried her in the small cemetery in Silver Reef, and Zelda grieved for the woman who had eventually learned to believe in her daughter's dreams. The years continued to pass. In 1910, Samuel married a woman named Catherine, who worked as a school teacher in Silver Reef. She was smart and capable, and she fit perfectly into the family. She and Samuel built a house on the ranch, not far from the main house, and started their own family. Their first child, a daughter they named Zelda after her grandmother, was born in 1911. Holding her namesake granddaughter in her arms, Zelda felt the circle of life continuing. Your grandmother believed in me, she whispered to the baby, and I will believe in you. Whatever dreams you have, little one, I will support them. Clara married a photographer she had met at an exhibition in Salt Lake City. His name was Richard, and he was as passionate about photography as Clara was. They turned the studio into a thriving business, with both of them working together to create beautiful images. They had twins in 1912, a boy and a girl, and Clara managed to balance motherhood with her career, just as Zelda had done. Daniel graduated from law school and passed the bar in 1913. He opened a practice in Salt Lake City, focusing on helping farmers and ranchers navigate legal issues. He married a few years later, and he and his wife had a son in 1916. Ethan and Zelda watched their children build their own lives, achieve their own dreams, and they felt the deep satisfaction of knowing they had raised them well. They had taught their children that dreams mattered, that hard work and determination could achieve remarkable things, and that supporting the people you loved was one of the most important things you could do. In 1915, when Zelda was 56 and Ethan was 59, they sat on the porch of their house one evening, watching the sunset paint the red cliffs just as they had done for decades. The ranch was bustling with activity. Samuel and his family lived in one house, and there were several ranch hands living in the bunkhouse. Horses grazed in the pastures, and cattle too now, as Samuel had achieved his dream of expansion. Do you remember when I asked you to tell me everything you wanted? Ethan said, echoing a conversation they had had many times over the years. I remember. You have asked me that more times than I can count. And your answer has changed over the years. First it was about the studio and your photography. Then it included children and family. What is your answer now? Zelda thought about it. Now I want to keep doing what we are doing, growing old with you, watching our grandchildren grow up, taking photographs when the light is right and the subject calls to me, sitting on this porch in the evening and feeling grateful for everything we built together. That sounds perfect. What about you, Ethan? What do you want? More of the same, more years with you, more time to watch the sunset and hold your hand, more moments of peace and contentment. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. I have had a good life, Zelda, better than I ever dreamed possible, and it is all because you stepped off that stagecoach in Silver Reef and decided to open a photography studio. And because you believed in me, because you saw me as someone worth supporting instead of someone to be discouraged. You were always worth supporting. You were always remarkable. In 1918, the world was changing rapidly. The Great War was ending, and the country was transforming. But in Silver Reef, Utah, some things remained constant. The red rocks still glowed in the sunset. The desert still bloomed with wildflowers in the spring. And on the Anderson Ranch, Ethan and Zelda still sat on their porch in the evenings, watching their world with contentment. Zelda still took photographs, though not as many as she once had. Her work was in permanent collections in several museums now, recognized as important documentation of the American West in the late 19th century. But she was just as happy photographing her grandchildren playing in the yard or the light on the cliffs after a storm. Ethan still worked with the horses, though Samuel handled most of the actual training now. But Ethan loved being in the barn, running his hands over the smooth coats of the animals, feeling their warmth and strength. They had achieved everything they had set out to do, and more. The ranch was successful and secure, providing a good living for multiple families. Zelda's photography had become recognized as serious art, and she had paved the way for other women photographers. Their children had grown into successful, happy adults with families of their own. But more than any of that, they had built a partnership based on mutual respect, support, and love. They had shown each other and everyone around them that it was possible to have both personal dreams and a strong marriage, that one person's success did not diminish the other's, that love could be a foundation for achievement rather than an obstacle to it. In 1920, on their 39th wedding anniversary, Ethan gave Zelda a gift. It was a leather-bound book, and when she opened it, she found that he had filled it with photographs. Not her photographs, though there were some of those, but mostly photographs of them together, their family, their life, pictures spanning nearly 4 decades. "Where did you get all these?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "I collected them over the years. Some Clara took, some Daniel took. Some I had other people take. I wanted you to see what I see when I look at our life together." She turned the pages slowly, seeing their story unfold. There was a photograph of her studio when it first opened, Zelda standing in front with such determination on her young face. A photograph of their wedding day, both of them looking impossibly young. Photographs of their children as babies, as toddlers, as young adults. Photographs of the ranch as it grew and developed. Photographs of them together, year after year, aging and changing, but always together. The last photograph in the book was recent, taken just a few weeks ago. It showed them sitting on their porch, his arm around her shoulders, both of them looking out at the view they had looked at for so many years. The caption underneath, written in Ethan's careful hand, said, "A life well lived, a love well earned." "This is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me," Zelda said through her tears. "Thank you, Ethan. Thank you for this. Thank you for everything. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for letting me. Thank you for being brave enough to chase your dreams and for letting me be part of them. Thank you for loving me." They held each other as the sun set, grateful for the life they had built, for the love they had shared, for the dreams they had achieved together. In 1925, they celebrated their 44th wedding anniversary surrounded by family. Samuel and Catherine and their 4 children were there. Clara and Richard and their twins, now teenagers. Daniel and his wife and their 3 children. The house was full of noise and laughter and love. After dinner, as the family gathered in the parlor, Samuel stood up and called for everyone's attention. "I want to make a toast," he said, raising his glass, "to my parents who taught us all what it means to believe in dreams. Papa, you taught me that hard work and integrity matter. Mama, you taught me that being unconventional is not something to be ashamed of. It is something to be proud of. You both taught us that love means supporting each other's dreams, not limiting them. Thank you for everything you have given us." Clara raised her glass next. "To Mama, who taught me that a woman can be anything she wants to be, who showed me that you do not have to choose between a career and a family, who believed in me just as fiercely as Papa believed in her. And to Papa, who taught me what a good man looks like, who set the standard for how I should expect to be treated." Daniel raised his glass last. "To 2 people who changed the world just by believing in each other, who raised us to be brave and to chase our dreams, who built something beautiful together. We love you both." Zelda could not speak through her tears. Ethan squeezed her hand and stood, raising his own glass. "To my wife, the bravest, most talented, most remarkable woman I have ever known. She had never had someone believe in her dreams until I said, 'Tell me everything you want.' And then I spent the rest of my life making sure those dreams came true. It has been the greatest privilege of my life." That night, after everyone had left and it was just the 2 of them again, Zelda and Ethan lay in bed in the dark, holding hands the way they had for 44 years. "I love you," Zelda whispered. "I love you too. Always have, always will. Do you have any regrets? Not a single one, do you? No, not one. This has been the most extraordinary life." In 1928, Ethan's health began to fail. He had worked hard his entire life, and his body was wearing out. But his spirit remained strong, and he faced his declining health with the same steady courage he had faced everything else. Zelda cared for him, and their children visited often, bringing grandchildren who brightened Ethan's days. One evening in late summer, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Ethan said, "I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I am not going to be here much longer, Zelda. I can feel it." "Do not say that. You are going to be fine." "No, and it is all right. I am not afraid." He took her hand. "I have had the most wonderful life. I got to marry the woman I loved. I got to raise 3 amazing children. I got to build a ranch and work with horses and see the red rocks glow in the sunset thousands of times. I got to achieve my dreams and watch you achieve yours. How many people can say that?" Zelda was crying now. "I cannot imagine life without you. You are strong, Zelda. You have always been strong. You will be all right." He squeezed her hand. "Promise me something. Anything. Promise me you will keep taking photographs, keep creating, keep dreaming. Do not stop just because I am gone. I promise. But please do not leave me yet. I will stay as long as I can." He stayed through the fall and into the winter. The whole family gathered for Christmas, and it was bittersweet, everyone knowing this might be the last time they were all together with Ethan. On a cold January night in 1929, Ethan Anderson died peacefully in his sleep, Zelda's hand in his. He was 72 years old and had lived a full, rich life. The funeral was held at the church in Silver Reef, and it seemed like the whole town turned out. Ethan had been respected and loved, known as a fair man who treated everyone with dignity, who had built a successful ranch through honest work and integrity. Zelda stood at his grave and felt like part of her had been buried there too. But she also felt gratitude for the 48 years they had had together, for every moment, every conversation, every shared dream. In the months after Ethan's death, Zelda struggled. The house felt too empty without him. The porch felt wrong when she sat there alone. She went through the motions of living, but the joy had gone out of everything. Then one day Clara came to visit and found her mother sitting in the parlor, staring at nothing. "Mama, you promised Papa you would keep creating. You promised him you would not stop." Zelda looked at her daughter. "I do not know how. Everything reminds me of him." "Then photograph those things. Photograph the memories. Photograph the life you had together. Honor him by doing what you do best." So Zelda picked up her camera again. She photographed the ranch, the places where she and Ethan had worked together. She photographed the porch where they had sat together thousands of times. She photographed the barn where he had trained horses. She photographed the red rocks that they had both loved. And slowly, through the lens of her camera, she began to heal. She began to remember not just the grief of losing him, but the joy of having had him. She began to be grateful again for the extraordinary life they had built together. She lived another 15 years after Ethan's death. She kept taking photographs, kept being active in her grandchildren's lives. She watched Samuel expand the ranch even further. She watched Clara's photography studio become one of the most respected in Utah. She watched Daniel become a judge, respected for his fairness and wisdom. In 1944, at the age of 85, Zelda Patterson Anderson died in her sleep. She was buried next to Ethan in the cemetery in Silver Reef, beneath a headstone that read, "She believed in dreams and found someone who believed in her." At her funeral, her granddaughter, the younger Zelda, now 33 years old and a photographer herself, stood up to speak. "My grandmother taught me that courage is not the absence of fear. It is doing what you dream of doing even when you are terrified. She taught me that love is not about one person giving up their dreams for another. It is about both people helping each other achieve their dreams. She taught me that it is never too late to be brave, to chase what you want, to become who you are meant to be." She held up a photograph, one that had been taken in 1881, showing a young woman standing in front of a photography studio, her chin lifted defiantly, determination in her eyes. "This was my grandmother on the day she opened her studio. She had traveled across the country alone, with nothing but her dreams and her courage. She had never had someone believe in those dreams until she met my grandfather. He looked at her and said, 'Tell me everything you want.' And then he spent the rest of his life helping her achieve it. But the beautiful thing was, she did the same for him. She believed in his dreams just as fiercely as he believed in hers. Together, they built something extraordinary, a ranch, a family, a legacy of believing in dreams and in each other. We are all here because of their courage and their love, because they believe that dreams matter, that people matter, that love is the foundation for everything good in life. That is the legacy they left us. and it is a legacy we should all strive to honor. The younger Zelda set down the photograph and picked up another one, this one taken in 1925 at Ethan and Zelda's 44th anniversary. It showed them on their porch, his arm around her shoulders, both of them smiling at the camera with the red rocks glowing behind them. They looked happy and content, two people who had lived their dreams together. "This is how I will remember them," she said, together, happy, surrounded by the beauty they had worked so hard to create. They showed us all what is possible when two people truly believe in each other, when they support each other's dreams instead of limiting them, when love is the foundation rather than the obstacle. Thank you, Grandma and Grandpa, for believing in dreams, for believing in each other, for showing us all what true love and partnership look like. Your legacy lives on in all of us, in every dream we dare to chase, in every time we support someone else's dreams, in every moment we choose courage over fear. Years later, when the younger Zelda was old herself, she would tell her own grandchildren about the remarkable woman she had been named after. She would show them the photographs, the ones that had been in galleries and museums, and the ones that had simply captured life on the ranch. She would tell them about a young woman who had stepped off a stagecoach in Silver Reef with nothing but dreams and courage, and about the cowboy who had believed in her. She changed the world, the younger Zelda would say, not in huge dramatic ways, but in important ones. She showed that women could have careers and families. She showed that dreams matter. She showed that the right person will believe in you and support you rather than trying to diminish you. "And Grandpa Ethan?" the children would ask. "He was the man who said, 'Tell me everything you want.' And then he spent his life making those things possible. He was a cowboy who worked with horses and built a ranch. But he was also a man who understood that love means supporting the person you love in becoming everything they can be. Together, they built something beautiful, a life, a family, a legacy. And that legacy is us. Every time we chase our dreams, every time we believe in ourselves, every time we support someone else in their dreams, we honor them. The story of Zelda and Ethan Anderson became part of the family history, passed down through generations. The ranch they had built continued to thrive, run by their descendants. The photography studio Clara had taken over continued as well, a testament to Zelda's pioneering work. The photographs Zelda had taken were preserved in museums and archives, documenting a time and place and way of life that had vanished but should not be forgotten. But more than any of that, their real legacy was the lesson they had taught everyone who knew them, that dreams matter, that courage can overcome fear, that the right person will believe in you when no one else does, that love is not about one person giving up their dreams for another, but about both people helping each other achieve their dreams, that a woman who had never had someone believe in her dreams could change the world when she found a cowboy who said, "Tell me everything you want," and actually meant it. Their story was one of courage and determination, of dreams achieved and obstacles overcome. But, most of all, it was a love story, a story about two people who believed in each other, who supported each other, who built something beautiful together. And in the end, that was everything.